Thank you, and welcome back to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin. Welcome back for our 65th episode this week, where we'll be recapping a Patriots' second loss to the Dolphins this year, assessing where the team is likely headed going forward, and a potential path, very slim path, but potential path to the playoffs, and previewing their upcoming game this Sunday versus the Washington Commanders. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter/X and Instagram at Pats 300 Level Pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day, as well as at our website at pats300levelpod.com. Kevin, I know after the Patriots beat the Bills a week and a half ago, we saw them play their best game of the year. We thought maybe this was the game they needed. Be a good opponent, divisional opponent, and take that next step, build off of it, and take that step in the right direction, and maybe go on a winning streak like we've seen in years past. But unfortunately, we saw the same issues that we saw earlier this year come back again. Pretty much everything's the last 3.5 years. Once again, more mistakes. And then they just weren't able to take that next step. They regressed to where they've been the first few games of the year, or just the whole season in general. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think my thoughts are pretty similar to what you said we've been having lately, where pretty everything that possibly could have gone wrong did in the chance when it shouldn't happen. So we have interceptions, we have just lack of kind of quality plays. And then the other thing where like we never want to blame just the refs for a loss, but realistically there was more than in one game. You could probably have maybe one game changing one. You're like, oh, that could have maybe that there was maybe like 5-6 different ones.
I think more
where you
than
could
that,
say, and it could have been more than that, which is, and it's not just this game where it's multiple games throughout the NFL each week, which is more than has ever happened before. The officiating has gone, it's completely ridiculous how bad it's gotten based on how much money the NFL has, how much money they should be investing in it. They still have full-time referees, and they don't have anything to hold the refs accountable. And then like we had tweeted out, and you were the one that tweeted out, was just, and you have to kind of question it when you just see how many game-changing calls there's been recently, and more than there's been in the past. But the amount that the amount that the NFL has tied in with betting partners, you just have to wonder, is it something with them? Is it something maybe the referees have? Is it a complete coincidence where they're just garbage? And maybe it's because a lot of the good refs end up leaving and they go to TV and whatnot. But it's getting really bad. And again,
the
they
Patriots
didn't deserve
themselves
to win the game. But they had the chance. They had the chance to win it if it wasn't for some of those calls. J.C. Jackson was not a defensive pass interference. There's the
ball
Parker
wasn't catchable
play.
either. So even though that he did hold the jersey a
Mhm.
little bit, that's usually a ticky tack call. But if you think, okay, that should have been a flag, it wasn't a catchable ball to begin with, so it wouldn't be pass interference.
Devontae Parker, the hit to the head, clear as day, and basically it's the exact call that they're trying to get out of the league. And they not only wasn't like a bang bang play where they don't have the time afterwards to talk about it or react. They're supposed to have the sky judge, and none of it. They had the time because they had to get him off the field because he was hurt. Clearly, he didn't just get concussed for no reason. And they had the replays. They were able to see everything. And they still didn't end up calling a flag, which was ridiculous. There was the fumble play where they blew the whistle 2 seconds afterwards. Play does not stop until you call the whistle. The forward progress doesn't stop. Matt Chatham had tweeted out, and we
learned that last year against the Bengals. It was Ramondre Stevenson had forward progress. They didn't call it. He fumbled it, which should have been forward progress, and the Patriots lost the game because of it.
So that's 3 calls, and there's the illegal man downfield, which ended up giving them 20, 30, 25 yards, which ended up saying it wasn't an illegal man downfield. But clear as day, he was 5 yards past the line of scrimmage.
No, it was close. If you look at the replay step by step, it probably was the right call, but that's something that you can't pull it back after you make the decision. You're supposed to, if the NFL sky judge is giving you that information, you do that. They give it to you before you make the call. You can't make the call and then say, actually, we take it back.
And
there's the illegal
there's
shift where two people were in motion going the opposite direction, which was on that same drive where the JC Jackson had I believe it was the same drive where he had the defensive pass interference, which led to a touchdown. And as Patriots fans, we've seen this a lot the last few years where it's been key plays and key situations where the refs are, the Patriots shouldn't put themselves in a position where the refs can make a call that can impact the game. So a lot of it is on them. But we saw last year the Vikings game, the Hunter Henry touchdown, they ended up losing. Whereas if they called that correctly, they might have won that. There's the Raiders game where it was 4th and 10 or something like that, or 3rd down and 20, where they called a catch where he was out of bounds and that led to a touchdown and them losing it. There's the Stevenson play against the Bengals that I just talked about. There were a few earlier this year, but it's not just a Patriots thing. It's all around the league, like you were saying, where the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, whoever was playing the Chiefs were pretty much getting hosed every single game, especially in the fourth quarter. The Vikings got hosed against the Chiefs. And we saw a lot even this week where there were play after play where the refs are making plays that dictate the game. And it's just something that the league has to put a stop to. And I don't know how you do it. I think you have to have full-time refs, or you have to have a ref grading system where if you grade badly, you're demoted or you're taken away from head ref or things like that, similar to what the Korean baseball organization, the KBO, has, where umpires are graded. If you grade poorly, you're demoted. And you have to have accountability, especially with the integration of gambling, where it's just going to lead to more and more questions. Are games being dictated? And that's something that I don't know. Once you lose faith in it, it's something that it's tough to get back.
And then, like, you could easily make the argument. I'm not saying it's the reason why it happened, but the fumble play, the Patriots were down by 1 score. At that time, the spread was 9.5 in favor of the Dolphins. If the Patriots ended up either stopping them well, basically they would have stopped them there. If they ended up scoring or even keeping the game within 7, that ended up changing a lot of the betting lines for a lot of people. So is that the reason? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I
think it's more incompetence than anything. But
my initial thought is the refs didn't want to blow the whistle too early, where he might have been able to gain yards, gain a first down, but he was stopped, and then they saw that the fumble occurred, and then they were like, "Oh no, we were going to call it anyway, but we were waiting to see if maybe he gained yards," and then they blew it.
But and you can't do it. That's not how it works. And then also we saw that in the what game was it? It was the Sunday night game when they threw it to the tight end. And I can't remember what team it was, but they ended up blowing it dead. But he ended up breaking away the second, like, they started to blow the whistle. So if they didn't blow the whistle, he would have gotten the yards. But they blew it dead. So that's what the whole point of the whistle is. All right, we talked a lot about refs. We talked a lot about kind of the same thing. Offensive line, Mac. What would you think the offensive line was at? It was really the two
overall,
things we
the
talked
offensive
about.
line was pretty good. City So had an excellent game where he didn't allow a single pressure, and he's been looking really good as a guard this year, and he's looking like he might be able. You found something, especially in one of those mid to late round offensive line positions. They did rotate him with Mafi, which is a little bit of a head scratcher considering how well he played. But I think as they don't want to just throw him to the wolves and him start to maybe get exposed, or give him confidence where he's playing well and then give him more and more instead of giving him too much where that could potentially hurt him. But it was good to see that when you had a pretty good game. I believe he did allow a sack, which is his first of the year. But overall, him moving to right tackle was very good. They did allow pressure at 40 something percent, which, looking back or in real time, it didn't seem like the pressure was that high. I think a lot of it was Mac allowing the pressure to get to him. And then Mac didn't have a great game. He did have some good throws, but I think a lot of it was he saw the pressure and it was getting to him. Where the interception, it was a really good play by Jalen Ramsey where he baited Mac into the throw. But again, Mac didn't step into the throw. He essentially was throwing off his front foot. And part of it was possibly because he thought the pressure was going to get to him and he thought it was too open anyway. But again, we've seen this a lot of bad habits from Mac this year, where I think he doesn't trust the receivers and he doesn't trust the offensive line holding up their man. that he's not stepping into throws. He's throwing off his front foot instead of throwing off his back and stepping into the throw and driving into it.
Do you mean throwing off his back foot?
He's
When you're
throwing off
throwing
his
off your front foot, that means you're stepping into it and you're leaning into it.
He's standing straight and then he's throwing into it instead of getting on his back and then stepping into it.
Yeah.
So he's not stepping into the throw is what I mean by throwing off his front foot.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a lot of things that we've seen with Mac, and it's making us kind of turn into sounding like crazy people when we kind of really defend him just because it's the same stuff that we're seeing.
Yep.
But again, we've also seen him play a lot differently in his first year, and I think the biggest thing that you said is I think trust is the biggest reason why this is happening. So one, the pressure, where I think the pressure completely screwed up his mechanics a lot, and his ability to kind of do the things that he's really good at, reading the field, picking the right receiver, making the right throws, using his mind is really the best thing. So we see it a lot pre-snap, a lot of the decisions he makes, changing out of plays, changing into plays, the different plays, that sort of stuff. But I think he's been really hurt this year and even last year from the pressure that he was getting and the receiver talent that he has, where he doesn't trust the person to be where they're supposed to be, or run the right route or make the right decision. Because a lot of the things that they have too are option routes. And is he going to be on the same page with the person? Are they going to see the same thing that he does? And half the time it's no. So they pick one route, he does the other one, and usually 9 times out of 10, you're going to trust what Mac is seeing more than the receiver because he knows what's supposed to happen. So again, I think he's a lot better than what he's been showing, and I just don't know what
the frustrating part for me is we've seen the good games this year too. It's not like he had a great rookie year and then just regressed and has stayed there. The game against the Eagles, he was excellent, especially in the second half. The game against the Bills, he was excellent, probably the best game of his career. But a lot of times where they're forced to come back, where they get into early deficits, is because of mistakes he's making, where he's reading the coverage wrong, or he's just not having the right mechanics, which leads to turnovers, which puts them into the big holes, and then they have to come back. And he's been excellent in the fourth quarter. Surprisingly, he's been statistically one of the best quarterbacks in the fourth quarter, has the best passer rating. And it's good to see that a lot of times he doesn't let it get to him. Granted, he's also, there are 2 games he didn't even play in the fourth quarter because of how far behind they were. But it's good to see that he has the mentality to not let a deficit get to him for the most part, outside of the Cowboys Saints games. But it's his mistakes early on that are really putting the team behind into positions where it's tough to come back. And we saw it again this week. We've seen it pretty much all year, and we saw it all last year too. The games they lost, the Bengals game, the Vikings game, the Raiders game. It's games where they're put into huge deficits early on by mistakes, and then he plays well, but he has to play a full 60 minutes like he did against Buffalo.
Yep. So yeah, I think that's really kind of what we saw. I think the big thing too with this game, which was frustrating, was just on offense how they looked, where we saw them look really cohesive. They had a really good game plan. It flowed really well, is the thing. And again, I feel like it got choppy again with what they were trying to do, and they weren't really. I don't think the play calling was where it needed to be. And it did surprise me a little bit because I was figuring that the Bills game was just a step in the right direction for O'Brien, just because it takes time to learn what your players and learn what they do well. And I think that's some of the stuff that him and Josh both have some issues with, where they try and outthink on themselves sometimes. And they get themselves into trouble by trying to overthink what they need to do and really game plan really well, where sometimes you just have to go out and do things and do it well and do what you're good at. And we saw it in the Bills game, the quick passing and all that sort of stuff. So
even the Eagles game too, where they were doing that, and then the Bills game they went back to that because that's what worked to them, but they didn't really do it as much this game.
So even if the Dolphins maybe are trying to do a little bit different things because of some of the injuries they have and whatnot, you sometimes you just got to do what you do well and not care about what the other team is doing. And eventually you can start doing that. But when you can't, you're not clean enough to be trying to do too many things that you can't do like normally. So, and just one other thing, injuries in the game. Parker obviously was knocked out. We're probably not going to see him for. This is what, second concussion this year?
His second in the last 2 years, where last year he had the bad one where the concussion spotter didn't spot him either. And it's 2 plays in a back-to-back years where Parker just got screwed. And it kind of makes you wonder, are they really looking out for patient safety at the NFL? and it's him specifically. Not patient safety, player safety. Wrong field.
Yeah. So yeah, he's definitely out this week. I'm guessing he's going to be more on the juju route when it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks before we
I
see
think
him.
I think since his back-to-back years, probably IR. I think he's going to miss at least 4 weeks.
Yeah. And then Bourne, obviously the one that hurt
ACL.
more, ACL. And he was obviously the best receiver. That one's going to sting a lot. I do hope they try and re-sign him or do something right by him because I think he's really kind of showing it all this year.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
And we've seen them do that with other players where Raekwon McMillan, where he got hurt in the offseason, 2 out of the 3 years he was here, they signed him to an extension to give him an extra year, not have to worry about the financial implications of the injury, but also do right by him based on the contributions he was giving the team early on. So I could definitely see them doing that, whether or not Bourne wants to sign a 1-year deal or if he thinks he can still get good value in free agency is another story. But I think that they will at least give him that potential offer.
Yeah, and he might just want to go to free agency anyway because his knee should be good, I would say, because it's only we're in November, so he should be clear to play. It's about 6 months or so for them. So
wide receiver ACLs aren't as bad as they used to be 10, 15 years ago.
Yep. All right, moving on. Real quick, defense. We did not see the same type of coverage that we saw last time, but we also didn't see the same type of players that we have. We had Marcus Jones and Christian Gonzalez last time. Didn't have them this game, and we really saw that really impact them. What we did think was going to happen didn't happen. They didn't have Jonathan Jones on Tyreek Hill. Part of the reason why a lot of our speculating, no one's ever come out and said it, but not like they would. But Jones had a knee injury going into the game. They might have figured they would rather have 80% of Jones on someone else and then have a 100% player on Tyreek Hill just because of Hill's speed. I don't think that was the right decision just because no one else on that team can match up with him. And we saw J.C. Jackson in the past get burnt by Hill, especially with the Chargers.
And part of that was the Chargers. They didn't put safety help over the top where speed for speed, no one can cover Tyreek Hill, or almost no one in the NFL can. Jonathan Jones is one of the few. I don't know about nowadays.
3 of them that might have the ability to do it.
Yeah,
because Marcus Jones covered man for man with him.
He got hurt in the early second quarter, though.
He did, but when he was on him, he was actually looking really well. Christian Gonzalez went man for man with him. And Jonathan Jones used to go man for him. And eventually, before they actually even had what's his name?
Sean Wade.
No, this was years ago. The Kansas City playoff game. They had the guy that was like a 6th or 7th round pick, never really played at all. They had him in. No, I'll look it up afterwards and see who it was. But he just really fast. That's the only reason why they had him out there. I think he was like a special teamer most of the time. But I'll look that up while doing that.
Too bad they let Amir Speed go.
Yeah, but maybe next year it'll be the other guy. Bolden? Isaiah. Yeah. All right. What would you like to say on the defense while I look up to see who that guy was?
Overall, they played pretty well. The thing that was frustrating was we saw them playing defense of thinking it's only a 3 down territory for the offense. And there were times where on 3rd and long, they were essentially playing prevent defense of not allowing a first down where they got, say it was 3rd and 15, and then they got 12 yards and it's 4th down thing. But Miami was playing a lot like it's a 4 down territory regardless. Part of it is just they have so many skill weapons that they trust their offense more than they respect an opponent's defense per se. And someone like Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, they trust more than whoever's covering them, regardless of if they're a good cornerback or not. So that was kind of frustrating to see where there were some bad tackles, some misplays, but also the defense wasn't aggressive enough. And you have to put that on coaching, knowing what they have to do, what plays they have to call to stop it, where it's good that they stopped them from getting the first down, but they still gave up enough yards where the offense can go for it and convert a first down on 4th down. And then they were also missed coverages as well. The Tyreek Hill 40-something yard touchdown where I think Mapu and J.C. Jackson didn't read the play right. It was a mistake by both of them. There's another one on the touchdown on the last drive where Jack Jones thought he should be going out to cover the man he was covering, whereas I believe it was Jonathan Jones thought Jack was going to stay with the inside man, and then it was a blown coverage that led to a touchdown and effectively put the game away. Where we've seen that a lot, where the defense has played well, but they still have big mistakes in key situations. And we even saw it last year too, where a defense as good as this is, if the Patriots want to have success, they have to be a top 5 defense. They have to be holding out, not allowing big plays. They can't have these big mental breaks in key situations. And they've shown promise, but they haven't executed a full 60 minutes on defense for a lot of the time this season.
And that's the big story with this, is where they played well for a majority of the game. You could
Yep.
say all but maybe 5-6 plays.
Yep.
But that's really what the Dolphins offense is about, are those 5 or 6 plays, just
Exactly.
because it's so explosive. The wide receivers they have. I still don't think, even looking at this game, and I know there's going to be people that say out there you're just a Tua hater or whatnot. I just don't think if you put him in a situation where you didn't have these guys, I just don't think he would be as effective. And you can put
we saw that too when the defense took away his first read, and he didn't look like the same player. Where the first game of the season, it was 3-step and then out, and it's whoever he's trying to throw to the first read. It's just a quick pass, and it's tough for a defense to defend. Where the defense scheme wise, I thought was better for the most part in coverage, where it's throwing things that Tua hasn't seen, and it takes away his first read, and he doesn't look like the same quarterback. But the pass rush also wasn't perfect, where it allows Tua to not feel rushed going into his second or third read, but when he was and the first read was taken away, he didn't look like the same player overall. So there's so much a defense can do when you have such explosive players on offense. And that's why I think Tua has looked as good as he has. But again, if you put Mac in that offense, does Mac look similar to Tua? I think yes.
I think he looks even better.
I do too. But again, it's tough to fully say with how he's regressed this year. But my belief is Mac would be better than Tua in this offense.
Yep. All right. Moving on. 3 up, 3 down. You want me to go first, and then you can go. So I've got Duggar, Barmore, and White. Duggar, it's funny. He was last week. He was on my down. He's been having a down year. I thought he played really well in this game. Had some really impactful plays. Was really all over the place, and he ended up taking over on the green dot when Bentley went down, and I thought was good in that aspect. Barmore has been on a really big run the last maybe 4 or 5 games, has looked sensational, and Keon White is just a specimen of a man, I would say. Where like
this is the game we've been waiting for Keon all year, where he showed some promise on a few plays here or there the first few weeks of the season. Granted, he didn't play a ton the first few weeks just because A, he's a rookie, B, they didn't need him as much, but this was the breakout game for him, where he was just on a whole nother level, and we saw his potential based on just his athleticism and overall.
Yep, and it's just crazy how fast he can run, being 290 pounds.
Yep.
And he was just really good. You're 3.
I think mine were exactly the same. With where Duggar was by far his best game of the season. We saw his potential. He didn't really have any down plays, which he's had before, and kind of showed the potential contract he's going to get if he plays like this the rest of the season. He has to be more consistent, but this was the first game where he was throughout the whole game. Barmore has just taken a step forward this whole year, where we saw promise as a pass rush his rookie year. He was hurt last year, but as the season went on, he got better. And he's just turned into a 3-down defensive tackle, where he's going to rush the passer, but he's also going to help stop the run too. And the Dolphins were the best running team in football this year, and the Patriots, in part due to Barmore, along with the rest of the front 7, really took away their running attack and forced Tua to pass. And Tua did well passing too, but the defensive scheme to slow down the run was very successful, and Barmore and even White, who's my third up, were very keys in that segment. Then, like I already mentioned, White was just all over the place on defense.
All right, 3 down. I'll give mine, and they can go. J.C. Jackson, Mac, and Miles Bryant. J.C. Jackson just was too inconsistent in this game, and he didn't provide that kind of number 1 lockdown corner, which we've been hoping to see, and he's been kind of gearing himself up to be. Mac Jones, just the interception. is just really inexcusable. That ended up ruining a scoring drive, and he needs to be playing better, and he's not. So
Yeah.
I have him, and then Miles Bryant just didn't look clean. He ended up coming up with an injury, so that could be why too. But he was on a bunch of plays where they ended up having big plays against them. So I had Miles Bryant.
Yeah, no, I think for me, number one was just the coaching in general, especially on defense, where scheme wise overall it looked good, but I still, again, like you said, no one's going to come out and say it, but the speculation is that Jonathan Jones was too hurt to cover Tyreek, and you'd rather have someone like JC Jackson. But we've seen the last 2 years of JC and with the Chargers of him trying to cover Tyreek, and it just was not successful at all.
Mm-hmm.
And his style of defense might be better suited for Jalen Waddle to cover. So I still would have rather I'd rather have an 80% Jonathan Jones on Tyreek Hill and JC Jackson on Waddle versus having to put JC on an island versus Tyreek, where the last 2 times he's played them was just not successful. So again, I thought they put JC in a bad situation. And then overall, because of that, both Waddle and Tyreek had over 100-yard games. And the key on defense was to take away Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and let anyone else beat you. And they weren't able to do that. So JC Jackson did have a bad game, and he is one of my 3 down. But I think that's because of the situation that the coaching staff put him in.
Yep.
And then my 3rd down was Mac, where he was okay, but he let the pressure get to him. A lot of the pressure was because of himself. And then he had that bad interception where, again, it was a great read and great baiting by Jalen Ramsey, who's one of the best cornerbacks in football. But Mac has to have a better throw or know not to throw it in that situation. If you're going to throw it to Bourne, you have to step into it. You can't lob it and allow Jalen Ramsey to come over and pick it off.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on. Where the Pats heading? We did this last week. I'll just do a quick update here, but no need to go down schedule by schedule. But they're 2-6.
Yep.
They have a stretch of probably 5 relatively easy games coming up, including.
I don't know
bye.
about easy, but it's winnable.
Relative. That's why I said relatively compared to what they've faced so far.
Yeah.
So they faced some of like the top teams in the NFL for most of the weeks beforehand. This is the easier part of the schedule. This is the easiest part of the schedule they're gonna have coming up. So they pretty much have to win out. Is really the crux of it, because if they win out of these 5 games, they'll be 7-6 hanging the Chiefs. That gives them some leeway where they could lose against the Chiefs, lose against the Bills, and then have to win against the Broncos and Jets and be 9-8 and hope to get a playoff spot. That's pretty much where they are, what they have to do. Is it going to happen? I don't think it's going to happen. But it might. I'm not losing faith altogether. But if I had to bet my house on it, I would say no.
Yeah. After the Bills game, I would have said yes. After last week, I'd say no. I think one thing that does benefit them is the Commanders, who we're going to get to in a minute, who they're playing this week. They traded their 2 best defensive players. You could argue 2 of their best players overall. They're facing the Colts in Germany without their starting quarterback. Granted, you could argue maybe Gardner Minshew is better than Richardson at the time, so that might actually hurt the Patriots. But regardless, Giants have injuries everywhere. Chargers have an incompetent head coach. So there is the opportunity. They play the next 5 games. They're playing the Steelers on Thursday night, and then they essentially get a mini bye before they face the Chiefs, which could help them a lot, where it gives them more time to prepare against a better opponent. And the Chiefs, outside of the Chargers game this year, have not looked like the same team as last year. So you could argue they have a chance of maybe getting to 9 wins. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. I think they're going to finish with 7 or 8, but they do have the opportunity. If they take care of business, they'll have a good shot. But again, they haven't shown that they can take care of business.
Yep. All right, moving on real quick. The news: Josh McDaniels, Ziegler, Mick Lombardi all fired from the Raiders, along with Jimmy being benched. What are your kind of thoughts, or do you want me to give my thoughts first? Because I've got some pretty.
I can go into mine first, and then
okay.
So Josh has been a terrible head coach. He was bad in Denver. I thought he would have learned from his mistakes. They were pretty apparent. But when he went to the Raiders, he pretty much did the exact same mistakes that he had in Denver, Maybe not trying to be built to as much as he did in Denver, but still trying to create the culture that he wanted too much compared to where the locker room was. And he also, a difference between Denver and the Raiders, where the year before the Raiders went to the playoffs and arguably should have beaten the Bengals if it wasn't for another reffing mistake. But that's a team that they really believed in their interim head coach, and then he took over. So it was a locker room that was already in a position to win, and he's trying to create a culture that maybe not doesn't fit the style. But we saw time and time again where he's making mistakes as a head coach. There were 5 games where he blew double-digit half leads. Should have been 6 for the Patriots last year too. And then he drives out the quarterback that got them there in Derek Carr. Granted, we both don't believe in Derek Carr, but the fan base and the team trusted him and believed in him, and he drove him out just like he drove out Jay Cutler in Denver. And just his in-game management has just every single week he's making decisions where it's like, what are you doing? Even against the Patriots, where there was a penalty that was a 5-yard penalty where it was second and goal from the 8, and it would either be 3rd and goal from the 8 or push it 2nd and goal from the 13. And he accepted it to be 2nd goal from the 13, but it gives the Patriots offense 2 more chances to get into the end zone instead of just 1.
3 more chances.
Well, it depends. They might have kicked the field goal.
Oh, yeah, true.
Because they were down by 9, so they still would have needed 2 scores. So it's just, he hasn't shown that he's a good coach. And I know part of your thing is he doesn't have an offensive coordinator, which he might be distracted, which is setting that. But he also set his coaching staff. So I was not surprised, especially with all the internal griping. And then after that loss to the Lions, where you could tell he lost the locker room, he needed to be gone. I thought he was going to be fired this week. But I was surprised that they also let Ziegler go, because it depends. Ziegler brought in Devontae Adams. Part of me wonders if it's that Davis went to Ziegler about it, and then Ziegler said, no, I still believe in Josh. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. Ziegler and Josh were roommates in college, teammates. They were very close friends, so maybe Ziegler didn't want to fire Josh, and that led to it too. Or Davis just wanted a clean house, get everyone out of there, get a new coaching staff and everything. And I don't think it's surprising that the one coach that they elevated to head coach is someone that wasn't from the Belichick scheme or from a Josh McDaniels loyalty per se.
Yep. Yeah. So I think the fact that let me reset. So I think part of the problem was really, I think Mark Davis's kind of playing with this whole situation, and really what did Josh and even Ziegler tell him? So we don't know that. We don't know what their pitch was with them. A lot of people looking at this team, and there's actually a really good article from ESPN, which usually I don't like to plug, but it's a lot of the stuff we've seen out there. It just puts everything together, and a lot of things at least I agree with in there. So I tweeted out today. Everyone should go give it a look. I'll throw it in our blog just to give it a little bit more views that way. But I think a lot of people saw that Raiders team and said that they very outperformed what they should have done. Yeah. There's a bunch of close games that they ended up winning towards the end of the year, which usually when that happens, it flips the next way. Yeah. The next year. And I think 4 of the 5 games that they won to win out the end of the season were against backup quarterbacks. You're not expecting to see that all the time. So, and if you actually even look at the roster itself, the roster wasn't as good as what needed to be. There's a lot of holes. They haven't had first round picks that have succeeded. They've gotten rid of pretty much all of them except for Josh Jacobs. And they just Gruden, as much as I like Gruden and Mayock, did a really pretty poor job setting up this roster where they don't have really any homegrown talent. I think there's another one. It wasn't mentioned in this article, but I saw it somewhere else, where I think the Raiders have one of the least percentage of homegrown players that are actually on their team right now. And that's another big category, is where you can't win like that. So that's part of the problem. Where what was the pitch that Josh ended up giving? And Ziegler ended up giving him. Did they say that this is a complete rebuild? And we saw in the reports that Jeff Howe was surprised that they cut him because they said that he was giving him till the end of 24 for the rebuild. So there was some sort of rebuild that was mentioned in there. I think part of the thing was that if you're going to do a rebuild, maybe this is something Davis didn't want, but you can't really half-ass it. Where I think they got really their feet really in two different spots where we're trying to contend now, but we're also trying to rebuild. But you're really sending mixed messages where you're trading for Devontae Adams, but you end up trading valuable assets to really build up the team, where you're trading a first and second round pick where you really need those. And are you really a Devontae Adams away from winning a Super Bowl? Probably not.
Yeah.
And even the Chandler Jones situation, no one could have foreseen him going crazy, but was pass rush something that they really needed at that time when they had Max Crosby, and they even drafted a pass rusher this year. So I think some of the moves that they done didn't really make total sense.
Yeah.
And I also don't think that Davis gave him enough time to really do this. We've seen this with a lot of coaches where they've started off really poor. We saw it with the Lions. It was like 4-19-1, and then
But
ended up
I
going
think
up.
there's a big difference between those and this, where once you lose the locker room, you're essentially done unless you're going to gut the whole thing. And you could tell pretty much even after last year, but even this year too, that he lost the locker room, and the loss to the Lions was just the nail in the coffin.
Oh yeah.
Where, yeah.
Oh, go on. Keep going.
I was just going to say that was the nail in the coffin where he lost it. He's not going to be able to come back from that unless he guts the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they haven't really been able to show that even if they gut it and try to build it back up, you're going to be able to do that.
Are you the team that wants that's the big thing. Are you the ones that should be the one leading this? And again, I agree with getting rid of Carr. I don't think he was good enough. But and I thought that Jimmy was going to be the right kind of stopgap for him because it's something that he worked well with him before.
I saw a rumor. I don't know how true this is, but it would make sense that Josh was banking on Brady coming over and being the quarterback this year, and they were making the whole decisions, especially to get rid of Carr with the anticipation that Brady was going to take over, and he just didn't. Where if Brady is the quarterback here, you don't necessarily need to. You have the pieces. Granted, there are a lot of holes, but you have pieces where Brady will be able to take over, especially leadership wise. That Josh might be deficient in. But with that, you have to go with the stopgap of Jimmy G that everyone knows isn't going to play a full 16 games, even if he is playing well. And then you're going to have to be stuck with Brian Hoyer or quarterback you draft. So again, it's just Josh put himself in this situation, and you would have thought he would have learned from his first go around, but it seemed like he made the same exact mistakes, and his in-game decisions weren't good to begin with anyway.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see him back, but we'll see what happens. He's got 4.5 years paid leave right now, so I don't think he's coming back anytime soon.
As we learned from the what's his name, Cliff Kingsbury contract, was that in order to recoup that guaranteed, if you're fired, you have to look for work or get work elsewhere. If you're just not being active, you're not, like, you could be out of the money. So if that's in Josh's contract, then yes, I could see him coming back. If it's not in his contract, I mean, if it's me, I would take a nice year or two off getting $4 or $5 million a year or whatever the hell it is. But
yeah, I think it's closer to the 10.
I don't think anyone really knows,
because between him and Gruden, for the next 4 years, they're owed $80 million, and Gruden was a 10-year, $100 million contract.
Those are rumors. I think people are speculating. I don't know if they know that's the actual case.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. If I was Josh, I'd probably just take off the rest of the year and then wait and maybe come back next year. But who knows? Maybe he's bored. All right. One quick question before we move on to the Commanders, and we'll just do all of this real quick. Favorite Halloween candy, because it was Halloween this week.
I go with the Reese's holiday special, like the holiday ones,
like these little pumpkins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say those are my favorite. And then Butterfingers, 100 grand bars.
Butterfingers is a good one that I don't have. Yeah.
Butterfingers.
Yeah. Butterfingers a good choice.
Yeah. All right. Washington predictions. So again, we talked about they traded their two best weapons on their team, Chase Young and Montez.
Weapons might not be the best. When you think of weapons, you think of wide receivers.
Yeah.
But best
McLaurin
players
would be their best weapon. But two best players. Chase Young to the 49ers for a third-round pick. Montez Sweat to the Bears for a second-round pick. So that's going to obviously make their pass rush not as dominant as it could be. So that could help the Patriots. Looking first at offense, they have Sam Howell, who's actually played fairly well this year, at least I think by watching him. And then their best receivers, obviously Terry McLaurin, and then Curtis Samuel's done a nice job as well. So
Yeah.
um, obviously, I think the key to the game for the Patriots defense, you want to take away Terry McLaurin. Sam
Yeah.
Howell, Bill has done usually pretty well against stopping quarterbacks that are in their first year. Technically, this is Sam Howell's second year,
Yeah.
but
He
he
only
didn't really
really
play
played one
much.
game last year.
Yeah, he didn't really play anything last year, so I'm still counting this as his first year. So Bill's usually pretty good at stopping first-time quarterbacks. So I would like to see them kind of like throw everything at him, confuse him.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the key of the game. Stop Terry McLaurin, confuse Sam Howell, and I think the rest should kind of go together. Any other thoughts you have on their offense?
Yeah, they do have some good weapons. Like you said, McLaurin's by far their best. You could argue he's a top 10 to 15 receiver, maybe better if he actually had competent quarterback play, which Sam Howell has been played pretty decent. But they also have a good tight end in Logan Thomas, who has I think 3 touchdowns this year, 280 yards, 30 catches. Curtis Samuel has played well, 35 catches, 330 yards, 2 touchdowns. And even Jahan Dotson has played well, 291 yards in 8 games. Their running back, Brian Robinson, is good. I like him, but he's underperformed this year, less than 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, though. So I think a big key to the game is stop McLaurin as number one, stop the run game in Robinson, and force Sam Howell to beat you going to second, third options. And if they're able to be successful in that, I think the Patriots will have a decent shot, especially with the, I almost said their old name, with the Commanders being without their 2 best players on defense. So I think the Patriots defense scheme wise can definitely throw something Sam Howell's way that he hasn't seen and make him see ghosts. But they can't have those breakdowns that they've had week in and week out this year, where they're playing good 55 or 95% of the plays, but have those 5% that beat you, because that's how the Patriots could lose this game.
Yep. And then looking at the Commanders' defense, again, they lost Chase Young, Montez Sweet. We got Jonathan Allen, really good defensive tackle, and Darren Payne's a pretty good tackle as well. Not too really big names that they've got, really compared to a lot of other teams.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to kind of see how the Patriots do this, especially without that pass rush. Really would hope that this would be the game to really get them start going in this
Yeah.
5-game stretch, establish the run, and then be able to have some nice kind of pass plays, show off booty. Gonna have some booty time. Hopefully, sounds like maybe they might be able to put him in this game this time. I'm hoping for it. I'm hoping for some booty time, but we'll see. Any other thoughts on their defense? How to attack them?
Yeah, their defense hasn't been good in pass defense. Overall, they have the 4th most yards per game allowed overall for all yards, as well as 4th most allowed for passing yards. For rushing yards, I think they're top 10. So it might be a little bit tougher to run against them. Like you said, they have 2 very good defensive tackles who, over the last 3 years, are among the league leaders in tackles for loss. So it's going to be tough to establish that inside running game. So I think you're going to want to have a lot of quick play action or quick passing passes or screens to essentially work as a running attack, similar to what we saw against the Eagles in week 1, where they didn't really run the ball much, but they threw a lot of quick passes to essentially work as runs. So I would expect them to do that this week. They don't have to worry as much about a pass rush as much as they would have if this game was happening last week with Young and Sweet being out. But it's going to be tough to really establish an inside running attack versus those defensive tackles. So I wouldn't expect a big game from Stevenson and Elliott in running the ball unless they're able to establish the passing game early and then they work in the run.
All right, looking at prediction time, Patriots finally favored again, -3, over under 40.5. So back to a pretty low over under. My prediction, I'll give a first. I've got the Patriots winning 24-17. I think they're going to win this game. and we'll have to see. But I think this will be the start of hopefully a win streak. I don't think the win streak is going to happen, but I've got them winning this game.
Yeah, I'm just laughing because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But that's kind of what I'm doing, where I have the Patriots winning 31-13. I think the loss of Young and Sweet are going to be very big for the Commanders. Almost said the wrong name again and get us canceled. But I think this is the game where this seems like a get it right type of game for the Patriots based on who they're going up against. I don't believe in Sam Howell, even though he's played well. I also think it's a red flag that he only eats chicken nuggets and stuff like that and doesn't eat beef or seafood because of that. And I would have never bought in on him being quarterback because of that. I think that's a huge red flag. So I don't trust he's going to be able to see the scheme that he's going up against on defense. But again, I think the Commanders are too flawed, don't have enough weapons, and Ron Rivera has been a terrible coach. So I say the Patriots win 31-13. I think the defense plays better. They slow up. They don't allow those touchdowns that they did this past week versus the Dolphins. I think they're going to be a bend don't break defense, and they're not going to break.
All right, sounds good. So thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully it will be another Patriots victory. Only third of the year. If it does happen.
If they don't win this game, there's nothing to look forward to the rest of the year. This is a game they have to win.
Yeah, it's a must win. I will be there. I will be probably not giving too many tweets during the game because I can't really tweet during the game, but
I'll try
I will
my
be there
best to
giving
take
fresh
over.
perspective. And hopefully they win. So make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Follow us on Instagram and X at Pat's 300 Level Pod, and on our blog, pats3levelpod.com. We will have to start putting more and more blogs up. We have not done a good job of that this year.
Yeah.
We will start.
Just some news. Curtis Samuel, the Commanders' second wide receiver, he just missed his second straight practice. So today's Thursday. He missed Wednesday and Thursday practice. So the Commanders might be without him as well on Sunday.
Well,
so
that would be good news if that happens. Yeah. Not room for injury, but that would be better news for the Patriots.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you everyone for listening. Look forward to having you guys check in with us next week.
Yep.